All right, so what are the skills that every company is looking for? In fact, the question I typically get, because I was a consultant by trade, is that what are the things, I have this interview with a consulting company, what are the things that they want to, what are they looking for in the interview? And I'll tell you that there are three things that I actually think are really great to make sure you bring out in your interview. But honestly, I think this applies to every company because these are not just exclusive to consulting. So I will say in the question here, instead of saying what are the things that consulting companies are looking for, what are the three things that companies in general are looking for? Here they are: problem solving, resilience, and teamwork. Now, let me explain what I mean by these because these three things go together. Problem solving is a critical thing, and I learned this as a consultant that when I show up day one, nobody expects you to know everything. That's pretty weird for students coming from Macomb School of Business, or really anywhere, when you've kind of been around, really smart people through college. It's really weird to be okay, you know, to be okay with not knowing the answer. But I was expected to figure out things, not to know everything. And that was a hard transition for me my first few weeks in my full-time job. So what my boss set me down and taught me was that, you're not going to know the answer to everything, and that's okay. You need to just be okay with that. That was a great experience for me because it kind of calmed me down. And so what she taught me was, you're not going to know the answer. So first thing you got to do is ask a lot of questions. You got to exhaust all of your resources and really try to, go to the end of every possible avenue to help solve this problem. And you'll leverage other people. It's not just on your shoulders. So be a problem solver. And you need to be able to explain how you have a method for problem solving. You can't just say, I like solving problems, because that's not good enough. That doesn't tell me that that doesn't prove to me that you can solve problems. So show me that you can solve problems. If you've got some, parts on your resume when they say, tell me about this, if you've got an example of how you solve problems, then tell them that example. Don't just tell them I was the president of this organization. That's just telling them something. Tell them, okay, if you're just asking me about this organization, on that organization, I had to solve problems. Here's what I did. And solving problems doesn't mean being the hero or being a rock star. It doesn't mean taking it away from other people, because that's not what leaders do. Leaders help other people be successful. So how do you solve problems? Two is, how are you resilient? This is the thing that most companies are concerned about with millennial generation and really just all young people in general, is that you've grown up and a lot of you are perfectionists. And the problem with that is that if you're a perfectionist, anytime you're short of perfect, you think you're a failure. And you got to get over that. Most of what you're going to do is not perfect. And even if you were told you were perfect, or you think that you can be perfect, just get off of that idea. What's important is that when you're solving problems, first off, you're not solving problems you've already solved before. You're solving problems that you've never solved before, or that maybe this company has never solved before. And that means you will not be perfect. You will sometimes fall short of success. You will make mistakes. But people are there who care about you. If you're at a great organization, they're going to care about you. They're going to want to develop you. They're going to want to help you. And so it's important that you are resilient and you can tolerate making mistakes. I always talk a lot about failure and the importance of learning from failure and how it does not define you, but it refines you. But again, if you think, man, I'm just going to work at a company and I'm going to work there for 30 years and never make mistakes, or I'm going to work at companies and never make mistakes, like, you're going to be sorely, sorely sad and mistaken. And I'm not saying that because you can't hack it. I'm just telling you that when you're learning how to solve problems, you're going to try things. And you got to be courageous to try and know that people are going to support you if you fall short of your goal. And if you fall short of your goal, just say, all right, that didn't go well. It stings, but what can we do better? So be resilient. And the third thing is teamwork. You've probably gone through college and you've learned how to work with teams, and you've always got that one person who doesn't show up and can't be depended on. You got the person who just doesn't care. You got the person who's the gunner who's just trying to take it on from everybody else. The reality is, in the real world, when you're on a team of 4 or 5 different people who have different work styles, you've got to figure out how to make it work. So the person who doesn't show up and isn't hacking it, you can't just take the work off their plate. As you move up in your career and take on more responsibility, you can't just say, oh, these 7 people aren't doing the work, I'm going to do it all for them. You're going to be miserable or stressed, or you're going to fall short. So what you have to figure out is, how do you work with people that you get along with? How do you work with people you don't get along with? That's just as important. You have to be able to work with different cultures, different work styles, different backgrounds. So I don't think this is the three things that consulting companies look for. I think there's three things that all companies look for. Is somebody who can come in, who doesn't know everything but can figure out anything because they're a problem solver, and have examples, real examples of how you methodically came up with that problem you solved. Number two is resilient. Talk about a time that you failed and learned. Talk about the thing that you aren't maybe necessarily proud of, but you're okay with because it helped you grow. Talk about how when you make a mistake or when you don't know the answer, you don't freak out. You can manage. And three is you can work with anybody because you don't get the luxury of firing your team members. You can work with anybody, good or bad. There are other things that companies will look for, but I think those are three constants across everybody that you're going to need to be able to, show that you can do those things. If a company says we're really big about having a fun spirit here, or some companies like we're big about coaching and stewardship, whatever, those are other things that are important too. And I'm not saying they're not, but I think those three things right there, if you can have a example prepared and not an elevator speech that you robotically just spout off, but think about these things and have some examples that you can kind of talk about. And if at the end in your interview, if you haven't gotten to tell a story about your problem solving or your teamwork abilities, and they say, hey, is there anything else? Then say, yeah, there's one more thing I want to mention that I think we haven't talked about, and that's my resilience. So those three things I think are what I tell a lot of students is have examples of how you can do this thing. And don't just make them up. Don't just lie. Like, you need to really have those things. If you don't practice those things, then you need to start practicing them before you can come up with your examples. But hopefully you have practiced those things and you do have examples. So if you have any further questions, post them in the comment section below, and I hope that helps.